We should all have the chance to rise. Hard work should matter.
Right.
It shouldn't be about what your skin color is. And if you are, you're considered underrepresented, and therefore you get a better deal. No, I don't want that. Michael, when I get in an airplane, I don't really care about the race, sexual orientation, or gender of the pilot. You know what I care about?
What?
Whether they can fly.
Hi, this is Michael Graham. Welcome to the Airport Diner, the legendary home of our diner table economics conversations. We talk to the people who want to govern New Hampshire about the most important economic issues to you, courtesy of our friends at the Airport Diner and our sponsors at Americans for Prosperity of New Hampshire. So I'm Michael Graham. Welcome to Diner Table Economics, when we find people who want to be your next leader, member of Congress, a governor, even president of the United States, and talk the way you do around your kitchen table about the economy. Vikram Mansharamani is our first guest, and so we're delighted to be here. Of course, Vikram, at the legendary Airport Diner. I assume you've been here before?
I have been here many times, Michael.
Okay. Michael's going to be our waiter.
Another
Hey,
Michael.
how are you, Michael? Nice to see you. Thanks for.
Nice to meet you both.
Yeah. So what do you want? What would you like?
I'm just gonna stick with coffee. Yep.
Wait.
Black
You
coffee.
brought your own mug? Oh, that is.
Contraband.
Oh, contraband. No, allow it, please.
I'll take a hot tea.
Hot tea and a
That'd be
roller
great
of
coffee.
coffee.
We're good.
Please.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much. So you know what? So one of the things that has been happening, Vikram, is that the state of the economy has gotten to the point that even fast food is now viewed as a luxury by a higher percentage of the population. I saw an executive with McDonald's talking about that. So I don't know where else to start a conversation about diner table economics except the cost of stuff,
Food.
inflation.
Well, let's talk with
everything.
food.
So
How about
you
bacon?
get elected to Congress. What do you do about the problem of inflation?
We're going to try to lower the cost of pork. all of it in Congress and at the bacon. Like, no, literally, Michael, bacon prices are up like 4x. It's crazy, right? Like, we've got unbelievable price action in almost all goods and services. So what do? We got to stop the spending. We have out of control spending, out of control borrowing.
Okay, so
right?
stop right there. This is
yeah.
where the conversation goes in an interview show, because you say that,
Yeah.
and then the people at home are going,
What?
I don't get how so what? So they spend a bunch of money on whatever,
Yeah.
government waste. How does that raise my price of bacon? Could you explain why you think
Sure.
that's connected?
Well, so first of all, when you have more demand, when the government turns into a source of demand and you have no new supply,
Right.
what happens?
Ah.
Prices go up, right? Prices. Thank you.
Thank
Michael.
you so much,
Perfect.
Michael.
Very hot
Excellent.
water.
Yes. We're going to leave this mug here for you to use with all customers.
Certainly.
All customers are welcome to
I
use this mug.
apologize that you've been dragooned into a political campaign.
We're going to bring a
Thanks
dozen.
for
You guys can
joining
pass
us.
them out. Although preferably the one in Concord.
Do you take cream or sugar?
No, I'm good. Just
You're a
black. Thank you.
purist.
Thank you.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
it.
much.
Thanks.
Very hot.
We're very good.
There you go.
So, whether it's the coffee you're drinking, the tea I'm drinking, the bacon at breakfast, you were saying that when the government comes on as a massive new customer and
Yes.
you don't have more supply, by definition, you're competing with the government to buy the same stuff.
That's it.
Okay.
Pretty simple, Michael. Right? Further, think about just even, I don't want to get stuck in monetary economics.
Well, I was
and
going to actually ask you about monetary policy, so it's
if
perfect.
you print too much money without having more goods, what do you think happens to the amount of money? Simple example. 10 people in a room, only 10 goods, and we give everybody $10.
Right.
The price of each good is going to be $10.
Okay, got
now,
it.
what if you print out money and give everybody $100?
Right.
But there's still only 10 goods
Right.
and 10 people, and everyone's got $100. What's going to happen? The prices are going
Exactly.
up. It's simple. This is what's happened. The government's printed too much and spent too much without a new supply response. And so we've added demand, or even just money,
Sure.
without new supply for goods or services. So prices went up. They did this to us.
so what-
They did this to us.
So what can Congress specifically do to turn it around? And what do you think is like a reasonable measure? Obviously, the good news is the 9% inflation we hit in 2022 is now gone.
Yeah.
It's now around 4%,
Hold
which
on,
is still...
why is that good news?
Well, it's
Michael,
good that it's gone.
Well, no, listen to me. Change in price is
Right.
not price level.
Right.
Right, there's a
What do you
difference.
mean?
This is, so I run around the district, I'm talking to people, and they say, oh, prices are high. And that's true, prices are still high.
Right.
But everybody else is saying, oh, the DC folks, the career politicians and bureaucrats, they're saying, oh, inflation's down.
Right.
Inflation down doesn't mean prices are down.
Right.
It means the change in prices is down, which means that, think of it this way, if your eggs cost $10 a dozen this year,
Right.
and next year they cost $10 a dozen,
Right.
you're still feeling the pain,
Sure.
and inflation went to zero for eggs.
No, that's a great point.
So
My point is
year over year is what we're talking about.
the ability of the government to change the trajectory. I don't know that steady deflation in a good way is possible.
No.
But like you said, it certainly is possible to hit the brakes on this. what are 2 or 3 things that Congress could do to actually cause prices to level, go down, let natural income growth, if my income catches up with the prices, we're all good. So what do you say?
Yeah, a couple things. One, we have to stop the inane handouts, right?
Okay.
The things that are just truly, I believe, unfair and I would argue wasteful spending. So, good example, student debt bailouts. By the way, not even clear it's constitutional, but we can come back to that. But $170 billion of student debt bailouts?
Right.
Michael, that's $700 for every single person in this diner. Assuming they're all taxpayers. Maybe some are not. So maybe it's a little bit less if they're not taxpayers. But whatever. It's $500 to $700 per person. By the way, if Biden gets his way, it's going to be 10x that.
Right.
Because there's 1.7 trillion of student debt out there.
Right.
And we're going to turn around and get rid of all of that? Yeah, that's a problem.
You know what else drives me crazy about the student debt part, other than the fact that I paid my own student debts?
Well, I
and
did too.
my
I did
kids
too.
and I've got kids in college right now, and we're doing a combo event. They have to borrow some because I want them to have skin in the game. You know,
Sure,
so
they
we're doing the
should.
things
They
that
should.
normal people do, and then we're going to have to pay my neighbors' debts too. What drives me crazy too is you're trying to push $170 billion in new demand, because that's what happens. You give
Bingo.
people money, they go spend it. So it's
That's
back to
right.
that first problem you mentioned, which is
Bingo.
not enough goods, too much money, chasing too few goods, and now we just dumped another $107 billion in money.
Yep.
That puts a little more pressure on inflation. It all goes back to inflation.
Also, Michael, it sort of elevates demand in a way that economic planners think is real. So I would argue the economy is on the precipice of a recession right now. Why is that? Here's an analogy some of the voters might recognize. Remember, Wile E. Coyote?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So he's gone off the cliff and his feet are moving. He hasn't looked down yet.
Right.
That's where it feels like we are. So why? Because the demand of us running was fake demand.
Right.
We gave people $170 billion, just
Right.
sticking with the student
Sure.
debt example. And so they went and they spent, $170. You know what? I can buy that TV.
Sure,
Let me buy a
exactly.
new computer. Let me
Buy
get
a car.
Whatever.
They've got to maintain.
Whatever, right? So they do that, except it's not income based. It's
Right.
they're living beyond their means because it was a handout.
Right.
So it's not a sustainable economic growth or demand story. It's a one-time story that people are using, and people think, oh, the economy's growing.
So
I'm not clear.
So the Vikram Mansharamani economic strategy, if I understand this correctly, don't look down.
Nah.
That's your.
Don't go off the cliff.
So
Don't go off the cliff. That's my strategy.
Why do you? So you gave an analogy about recession. How would you describe like what you think is going to happen in the next year? And once again, what is the government role in trying to address it? Because there's an argument made that look, you're going to have recessions. We haven't had a real one since the 2008, the Great Recession. This COVID recession was fake. We did it to ourselves.
Well,
what's
we could debate
the
that.
best we can do you think?
Yeah, Michael, so look, there's a couple things I'd say here. Your question of what's the role of a government in an economy it's almost too big to answer. But let's talk about what I think is happening right now and what may happen going forward. Interest rates being as high as they are have resulted in less spending, a slower housing market, a whole bunch of things that we think and we all feel and know are real, right? It's expensive. Everything's expensive. The cost of money is expensive. That's led to a whole bunch of ramifications. Let's take housing, for instance. Housing, when you raise the mortgage rates super quickly, what happens is people feel stuck in their existing homes because, I got a 3% mortgage. You want me to go sell this house and go buy another one?
Right.
And that next one I got to pay 7% of my mortgage? I'm sorry, I'm going to stay here. We're going to stay put for a little bit. So supply of housing stays lower. That keeps housing prices higher than they should be. So higher housing prices with higher mortgage rates equals housing costs going through the roof. Throw on top of that electricity, energy prices, etc. So what's the role of government in any of these things? Stop the spending, lower the inflation. Lowering inflation lowers interest rates, unlocks the housing market that's sort of seized up in this weird way and has less demand and less supply, both leaving prices high. And sort of once you lower the prices, a lot of good things are going to happen. So my goal would be, let's get our economy back on a sustainable trajectory of growth. It doesn't need to be juiced and growing very rapidly, but I sure as heck don't want it going backwards.
So let me ask you about housing, because there's been a lot of conversation in New Hampshire about how uniquely bad the housing market is. It's very, very difficult for people who are trying to get their first home, trying to start to find a home. And in the second district, it's particularly problematic in the sense that there aren't a lot of jobs spread around. That there are a couple of hubs of jobs. And you have people living in rural areas where there aren't a lot of work choices, and so there's not a lot of revenue choices. And so they're trapped in a couple of ways. What would you say if someone said, I'm from the government and we're going to have a affirmative program to help, say, first-time home buyers? Would that be a responsibility of the government, or would you say no?
Well, so let's
let the market work and do it
So
that
I'm
way?
always a believer that markets work, right? And so if you really want to know why we have a housing problem, you got to blame the governor. Blame Governor Sununu. He did a great job. He did a great job. Everyone wants to come here. That's the problem. We have an inflow of people.
Right.
And the legislature's done a great job. Right? They've kept taxes low. This is a
Right.
great place. People want to come here. We have an inflow of people. You know what happened? We had inflation. Why? We've talked about it. What has that done? It's more expensive to build a house. And so when housing prices are higher and you have more people coming, same lesson we've already talked about, Michael. More demand, less supply, we got a
So
problem.
are you saying the government has no role in the economic challenge of finding housing for people who need housing, not in theory over the next decade, but who need a house in the short term?
We're playing roles already. The government plays a big role in the housing market already, right? I mean, whether it's mortgage interest deductions, a big role, right? It encourages people to sort of buy, lowers the cost of buying a home. So there's that. Could there be other things we could do? Yeah, probably. We should look at that. I'm a big believer in helping first-time home buyers.
Okay.
I'm not sure we need to help third and fourth home buyers.
Sure.
People who are buying their third and fourth home. But with that said, I think we're doing the right thing. A lot of housing is unfortunately very local. I say unfortunately because for me as a federal candidate, it's not what I'm going to be focused on. But I think if we focus on inflation at the federal level, that can ripple down. And when we have the lower interest rates, that's going to help housing at the local level. But frankly, real quick, local zoning, those are the issues that matter most at the local level.
So it may not seem like it's related to housing, but I suspect you will see right away. I want to ask you about tariffs.
Yeah.
As you know, President Trump is a big believer in tariffs. He raised tariffs significantly while he was president. Here's what I find interesting. Joe Biden left those tariffs in place and even added some tariffs
They
on
were having a
China.
tariff war within the president and former president.
Exactly. Can you explain to people why, if you want to build houses and get the wood and steel and whatever you need, tariffs are going to play a role? And do you think that President Trump's approach is right, which is, yes, tariffs may drive up the costs of raw goods, but they protect American jobs and create more American income, so you have a net win? Or do you think, no, free market's the best way, let's get them, where are you on that?
So I generally believe free markets work best. What I will say...
And you do agree that tariffs have an impact on, for example, housing prices? Because
Absolutely.
so many of the things,
these are commodities.
steel, copper, exactly, all
These
the
are
things you
commodities,
need.
Michael, they work in global markets, right? Even if we are not necessarily importing or exporting a particular product, these are global markets, these are commodities, and as commodities, the prices get set by supply and demand on a global basis that ripples and comes home to hurt our prices. So yes, I do think there are global markets at work here. With that said, I'm generally a free market guy. I generally want less tariffs, free trade, it's better, you have less. Except in certain industries, in certain sectors that are frankly dominated by unfair trade practices, and tariffs are used to fix some of these
For
things.
example?
Well, it's not as relevant here in New Hampshire, but it is actually fertilizer markets.
Okay.
Well, we know, for instance, that Russian and Moroccan fertilizer was being dumped on the U.S. markets below cost. That makes it really hard to be a U.S. fertilizer producer. And so they have something. You can call it a tariff. You can call it a countervailing duty. I don't want to get too wonky on you here, Mike.
No, I love countervailing duty. I saw them open for whole in 2004. They were great.
So countervailing duties are just, hey, we're just making it an even playing field. We know their government has, and the Chinese have done this a lot in a lot of industries, right? So I think there is a role for tariffs, particularly when it comes to national security, even in fair competition. I just don't know if I like tariffs generically.
Right.
In a generic sense, I don't appreciate them.
What about
But I do find it fascinating that you had, Trump saying, Biden's like, I'm going to put 100% tariff on EVs from China. And Trump's like, I'll do 200%. Like, are you ready to see Biden went up to 300%? Like, that's not constructive, although it will protect the EV market in the U.S.
Yeah, well, no, and the EVs market is interesting because it fits right into what you're talking about, which is China has been subsidizing production. Their workers are not working in a free market. Their workers are building what the government has subsidized them to build. And now they have this massive production capacity. They have a weak economy there. They're worried about their own issues, so they're going to dump EVs on our market.
That's right.
So
by the way, true with solar, true with a bunch of other things.
Right.
And it gets worse, Michael. The Chinese are using slave labor to do this. They've imprisoned and put in concentration camps Muslims in Western China, making them work, whether it's cotton fields or solar production facilities. And so, even on a human rights basis, you can say this may not be appropriate. We shouldn't condone slavery.
Well, let's talk about the energy part then, because that's before we get to the specifics of what we were just talking about, which is the economy and green tech. when you think about the U.S. economy, people having jobs, and energy in general, what's kind of your starting point?
Well, the energy, let's just start there. I'm a believer in all of the above. And what do I mean by that, Michael? I mean literally all of the above energy, whether that's fossil fuels, coal, whether that's all hydrocarbons, whether that's nuclear, solar.
You support nuclear?
Wind,
Didn't you see that movie back in the 70s? We're all going to die. Didn't you watch?
I watched Chernobyl too.
Wasn't it fantastic?
I watched Chernobyl.
Good.
Or not Chernobyl.
Yeah, it was. It was at Chernobyl.
It was based on the book Midnight in
I don't know. I just the series, the miniseries Chernobyl was fantastic. It was so good.
I did like it.
But it didn't make me hate nuclear. It made me hate the
socialism
and
communism. Yes, exactly right. See, this is the problem. Get the lesson right. The lesson is communist, authoritarian, socialist policies don't work in any sector. And I thought it was fascinating because we're getting off topic here, but some of the folks there, like it was literally Animal Farm, right? Equality for all, some will be more equal. Right? Really? Okay, I get it. So, fine. 3 reasons I want an all of the above energy approach, and in particular one that utilizes all our natural resources, which are hydrocarbons here in America. Number 1, more energy. We talked about supply and demand a couple times today. More supply, all else equal. Prices are coming down. That's going to lower inflation. Better for our economy. Power our economy. That's good. Number 2, it's going to take resources away from the countries that hate us most. Putin is one of the world's largest beneficiaries of high energy prices. Lower the price of oil, take away revenues from Putin, make the world safer. And number 3, here's the kicker, which agitates a lot of people, but I'm going to tell you because you like to agitate people too.
Exactly.
Right? So more oil and gas production in America is going to save the environment.
Why?
It's good for the environment.
Why?
Because if we have regulations on our oil and gas production here. We don't let the methane just go in the atmosphere. We don't dump the drilling fluids in the water that we might be drinking. We have environmental regulations. So a barrel of oil or natural gas, not a barrel of it, natural gas produced in the United States is cleaner than a barrel of oil produced in Kazakhstan, Indonesia. You pick your place in the world. And so if we think that there is going to be oil usage, which I believe there is, we're not going away overnight, that means oil produced here crowds out dirty oil produced there. And so we're gonna help the economy, make the world safer, and save the environment just by drilling here. Let's do it.
So it's not uncommon for people running for office to say, I've got a green energy program. As you know, we had the Green New Deal. Vice President Kamala Harris was one of the original author or sponsors of the Green New Deal. And yet it's really hard to get them to talk about the cost. And a lot of people think, well, it's all, if wind, solar, whatever, it's all the same. There's no cost impact. Why is, how would you explain the current status of trying to go to an all electrified economy
I'll give you a personal example.
And the costs of it?
Mike, here you go. So during my last Senate campaign, I took my Jeep Grand Cherokee and I beat it into the ground. It was, I think I put on like 80,000 miles in less than a year, right? So I took it to the dealership. I said, hey, here, I'm trading it in. He said, well, do you want to get an electric one? I was like, what? Huh? He said, you can get a Grand Cherokee or they've got these new ones. I said, I'm not really interested, that's high price. He said, well, the Wrangler, an electric Wrangler, hybrid electric, we'll give you $7,500 off the price. I said, where? Wow. He's like, who's giving me? He said, well, actually, everybody here. Those taxpayers. You know what the range of that thing was? 20 miles in full electric mode. I live in Lincoln. Michael, I can't go anywhere for 20 miles. And by the way, it's cold in Lincoln, so the range drops when it gets cold. And you're on the side, in the winter, I'm like, it goes down to 14 miles. I literally can't get anywhere in 14 miles. So maybe it doesn't work in the 2nd district, but maybe it works elsewhere. So the electric vehicle costs, let me give something very clean and simple and obvious and clear for you.
Sure.
Kamala Harris, the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, really weirdly named in my eyes because it produced inflation. Goldman Sachs, we can debate whether we should believe them, but Goldman Sachs estimates the cost of the green subsidies in there over the next, I think it was a decade, it could go up as high as $1.2 trillion. Right? Because it's these electric vehicle subsidies. It's the charging stations. We're going to put charging stations. I think we've spent $7 or $8 billion on charging stations, but I don't think we have any to show for it yet. Like literally, maybe one.
I think there's 5 now.
Oh, 5.
The
Okay,
last number I saw, I think it was 5. As opposed to the $42.5 billion in broadband connection, which of course in New Hampshire we need. And I've said this on the record, I will become a communist if they will make my cell phone work in New Hampshire. I'm ready to convert. I mean, our cell service here is terrible.
Michael, I was
$42.5 billion.
Yep.
The lead,
I know.
the lead person in the White House on it was Vice President Kamala Harris. It was signed. As we record this, it was 999 days today that it was signed. How many people have been connected to the internet? Zero. Not a single person.
It's infuriating. Listen, as you know, I've done a lot of global work. I've spent time on, I don't know, almost 80 nations at this point. And I was on the phone with some friends in an emerging market, one that you would know, and you'd be like, oh my God, they're in the middle of nowhere, Africa. And the call drops. We reconnect, and he's apologized. I was like, actually, it's me. I know you're in the middle of nowhere, Africa, but you got solid coverage. I don't. I'm in New Hampshire.
I'm amazed that you're in 80 countries, and we still keep getting stuck with you. Why won't any of them take you? Why do we always get
there
Vikram?
You go,
No,
I'm totally proud American.
I'm totally
proud
kidding.
American.
So let's wrap up with this then. There are people who genuinely look at the economy and they say, why can't the government use its money, because that's how they think of it. But you and I can talk all we want about theory.
Our money,
I know, but that's
our money.
But
Let's make that clear.
There are a lot of people though who honestly look. That's not how they see it. They see it as the government has all this money. I'm struggling, and I always hear free market guys like Vikram say, freedom, free market's going to do it. What about me? And what would you say to that person? Particularly, I mean, think about where we are right now. 2 years after that spike in inflation that terrified everybody, and it's obviously says still not good. We're still at 46% of the country saying the economy not great, not good, not okay, poor. 46% pick the lowest rung. 70% say they think it's going to get worse.
Probably will.
Those people feel abandoned, missed out, whatever. What is your message to them when they say, why don't you just have the government give me something?
Well, that's the problem, is we've had too many people expecting and not enough people putting their head down and working hard, right? The student debt relief is a great example. As you know, Michael, I was on the board of a trucking company. I have my CDL license. I spent time out on the road with truckers. You know what infuriates them? They chose to go get a truck driving license, be responsible, live within their means. They're having their children do the same thing. They're working hard, paying their bills, and actually trying to get ahead. Meanwhile, somebody else goes and expects, and in a Democrat administration, they receive student loan bailouts. We need to get away from the culture of equity of outcomes and towards a return to the culture that made America great, which is equality of opportunity. We should all have the chance to rise. Hard work should matter. It shouldn't be about what your skin color is. And if you are, you're considered underrepresented, and therefore you get a better deal. No, I don't want that. Michael, when I get in an airplane, I don't really care about the race, sexual orientation, or gender of the pilot. You know what I care about?
What?
Whether they can fly. How about that? Can they land where it says on the ticket I'm going? But this is related. This is why people feel like the system's rigged, because in some level it is. We need to unrig the system. And unrigging the system means going back to competency as a metric, going back to how hard you work and putting your head down and getting ahead that way, not because you claim some victim status that gets you a special deal.
So what would you say to people who feel like they're just going to give up, like the system just doesn't work?
Don't give up. Vote.
What is your message to them?
Vote.
Well, why should they still believe that the American dream is attainable?
It is attainable if we get our policies back on track. When we get away from this socialist instinct of give me, give me, give me, and focus instead on I can produce, and by producing I will share in the gains of my production, and we will all be better off with more production. That's a different logic. And I think we can go back to it. Michael, it wasn't that long ago that we had that logic in America, right? Where Reagan referred to it as it's morning again in America. Inflation is coming down. People are going back to work. People are actually going to put their head down, pay off debt, and move forward. We can do this. And by the way, a lot of our problems start disappearing when we get economic growth going. I'm an optimist. I really am. You know, I've studied innovation. I've spent time with entrepreneurs. We can create new industries and ideas here in America. We don't need to let the Chinese become the artificial intelligence hub. We don't need to cede space and the commercialization of space to another country. We can do that. We've seen what private entrepreneurs do. They grow the economy, they create jobs, they create wealth, and they create opportunity for everyone. And that's what we need to go back to, an opportunity focus, not an outcome focus.
Good. I'm going to do a shot here.
Go ahead, we'll get...
Vikram Mansharamani, nice mug, thank you. Thanks for joining us here at Diner Table Economics. And thank you, of course, to the Airport Diner. That's fantastic. They're always our hosts. Thank you also to Americans for Prosperity New Hampshire. They made this possible as well. I'm Michael Graham with New Hampshire Journal. Thanks so much for your time.